Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm Lysha from Lysha Be Creative, and today's tutorial is yet another plaid tutorial. I know, I already have multiple plaids on my channel, but I cannot help that now that it is fall that I am just raring to go with creating all these beautiful plaids. So of course everything I use for today's double ombre plaid will be listed and linked down in the description box, as well as any discount codes that I have for you to save some extra money. And of course if you'd like to follow me on other platforms, you can do so by clicking the links in the description box. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's video. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So I have already prepped a 24-ounce plump, and I actually use this cup in my group to show my group how to do glitter butts. So I have now taken that cup and taped off the bottom so I don't get any spray paint on the bottom, and I have done an ombre of Cosmo and Summer Pedicure from Colorshot. So I've done a beautiful ombre, and now I'm getting ready to put my glitters together. So my glitters of choice today are going to be That's Hot, Glamorous, and Death by Glitter. So Glamorous and That's Hot are going to be my two main colors. I'm throwing Death by Glitter in there as the black color shift holographic because I want to make sure that my mix of glitters looks completely different than the squares that are going to be the ombre. So I didn't want the two colors mixed together to look identical to my ombre shift. I wanted there to be a true sort of definition of where you can see that ombre line kind of hits the tumbler. So I'm mixing equal parts of my glitter here into a medicine cup. I like to fill my medicine cup probably all the way up just to make sure I have enough glitter to get through two coats on all of the squares that are going to be sort of the dominant amount of squares of the cup. So your mixed glitter is going to be what takes up the majority of the cup as far as the squares on your cup. So it's important to make sure that when you mix up your glitter that you have more than enough glitter to get through all the squares that you need to. So now we're going to go ahead and begin to tape off our cup. So you guys have seen me do different techniques when it comes to putting plaids together on my channel, and so I wanted to bring to you guys a different way that you can also do plaids. So this is something that I learned from Myra Makes It, who learned it from Felicia from By Felicia. So to sort of set up the squares for your plaid, I'm doing sort of every other. So this saves a little bit of tape for sure. But what you're going to see me do, I just did it with the vertical lines, and now I'm going to do it with my horizontal lines, is I'm going to lay a piece of tape, lay a second piece of tape, then lay my third piece of tape, and remove that middle piece of tape, and that is going to be the first set of squares that I'm going to start with. So I'm going to do this all the way up the length of the cup for both the vertical and the horizontal lines, and this is going to help me sort of have my squares ready to go so that I can make sure that this is kind of a little bit of a quicker process, if you will, to get my plaid glittered. So I'm showing you this way because I just feel like I'm someone who just likes to show different techniques and ways to do things. I'm someone who definitely believes that it isn't one size fits all when it comes to different techniques. And so I want to make sure that the content that I bring to you is also very versatile, because this might be a technique that works best for you. Or maybe one of the other techniques I've shown on my channel is better for you when it comes to putting together plaids. Now that our plaid has been taped off, we're going to start the process of glittering. So because this is a double ombre, I'm going to confuse you a little bit here, because really at this step, you would be doing your darkest color first. But because I'm doing a double ombre plaid, what I'm going to be doing is putting both colors down. So in the coral section, those bottom two rows are going to be all coral glitter, which is That's Hot, and then the top two sections of squares are going to be Glamorous. So normally you would be starting with your darkest color here if you're doing the traditional plaid as far as putting together a glittered plaid. But because I am doing an ombre style plaid, so the top section is going to look the complete reverse on the bottom section, I have to make sure to start with my base being the lightest color on the bottom versus the darkest color, which will be on the top. So hopefully that didn't confuse you too much, but I promise it all comes together in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and paint my squares with my Mod Podge and get my That's Hot on. And then I will switch gears and do some Mod Podge application and glitter the top two sections with the glamorous glitter. So I do recommend doing 2 coats of glitter when it comes to glitter plaids. I just feel like it gives the best look. I also recommend using a straight edge paintbrush. You're going to get the crispest lines, and you're going to see that your paintbrush really does make a huge difference when we go into starting to remove some of those tape lines. So I've just finished my first coat of glitter for That's Hot. I'm now going to go in with my first coat of glitter for the first 2 rows of the plaid, which is going to be glamorous. So for this first set of squares, you really don't have to worry about getting glitter and Mod Podge all over. Really, you're going to be doing this so quickly that you can really go way over the lines. It's not a huge deal. It is going to make a big difference, and you're going to have to be a bit more precise as we get to removing more lines. But for this initial coat, 2 coats of glitter, these first squares, you really can kind of be willy-nilly when it comes to applying your glitter, if you will. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and then now we're going to go ahead and remove the tape lines to set our second sets of glitter. Okay, so I've already done a second coat of glitter off camera. I just dried it with a heat gun in between and then did my second coat of glitter right on top. So this second coat is probably still a little bit wet, but we're now going to go ahead and remove our horizontal lines. This is going to show us and free up another section of our glitter squares that are going to be the mixed glitter. So the next 2 glitter passes that we're going to be doing are going to be using our mixed glitter, which is the That's Hot, Glamorous, and Death by Glitter all mixed together. So you want to be obviously a little bit more careful when it comes to glittering these squares, because you want to make sure not to get any of that mixed glitter on top of your other colors. But take your time with this, and this is kind of when things start to get a little bit trickier. After we've done the squares that have been freed, we're now going to remove all of the vertical lines. Okay, so this is where precision is super key and super important, and why it is especially important that you have a straight edge paintbrush. That way you can make sure you get really crisp and really nice lines on your cup. So after I remove the vertical lines on the cup here, we're now going to have to create our own boxes, so to speak, in order to finish up this plaid, okay? So you'll notice that it goes, the mixed glitter, then the darkest color or lightest color, and what we're going to do is we're going to be putting the darkest and mixed glitter color, I should say, right across from our lightest or darkest. So normally this would be right across from your darkest glitter, and so here's a slowed down version of that. So I'm starting at the bottom, I'm going in between my 2 coral squares for each of them, and then as I get to the top section, I'm going to go in between my 2 purple squares in each of the next few rows. So you want to make sure that where you're putting this mixed glitter is not next to another mixed glitter square. So I hope that makes sense. If you need a reference, definitely just pull out a plaid image, and this will help you kind of create those colors and create where everything kind of goes. But essentially it should make sort of like a cross, if you will, with your or a T with your mixed glitter look. So now we're down to the final squares that need to be glittered. And for this section, I'm going to start at the top. And so I have 4 boxes in each row, vertical row, that have to be painted. The first 2 rows, sort of what's closest to my hand, which would be the top of the cup, are going to be all coral glitter. So the first 2 rows will be That's Hot, since that is the opposite color of the glamorous color, which we did the first initial squares. And then the bottom last row of squares that go sort of horizontally around the cup will also be the darkest color for the cup, which is glamorous. And then that square that is right in between is going to be where we're going to create the ombre. So I'm going to finish working with my first 2 rows of squares here and get those with the coral color, That's Hot, and then I'll be able to move on to the bottom section before I move into that very middle section of my cup, which is going to be my ombre. So you definitely have to do sort of this cup with the thought and intention to remember that you are going to be mixing those 2 colors in that last sort of row of your plaid, okay? So I had to stop myself multiple times because I was so afraid that I was going to accidentally put a color in the wrong place. I kind of had to talk myself through it to make sure that I didn't accidentally glitter the wrong square. So I'm doing the same thing I did with the top with the bottom, except for because this is the exact reverse or opposite of my top plaid. This is going to be the glamorous purple color in this row of squares down below. And then after I've done that, I'll go in and we're going to glitter and ombre that last row, horizontal row right in the middle of the cup, which is going to be a mix of both glitters. So it's important that when you're doing your ombre for this section, obviously you want to make sure that you are ombreing in the correct direction. So because my bottom squares, my last square color is going to be purple, then my purple should be coming from below upward, and then my coral color should be coming from the top of the cup down towards the bottom, if that makes sense. So obviously you want to make sure that your ombre is going in the exact direction that your last square colors are going. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I'm not confusing you too much. I feel like it's probably easier to watch the video than listen to my voiceover, because I probably have confused basically everyone at this point with what I'm doing. I don't even know how I came up with such an idea to do like an ombre with this, but I just was in like a glitter plaid mood, and I've been kind of under the weather and sick with a cold that I just have not been able to shake. And in my downtime, when I'm feeling good, when those, you know, cough meds have really kicked in, all I want to do is playing glitter because it makes me happy. So I've just gone in with that glitter and created that ombre. So you can see that beautiful ombre right in that section of squares right in the middle. And so I'm going to do my second coat of glitter. I'm going to repeat this and do the exact same thing that I just did in all of the sections for my last square, so that each of my squares have 2 coats of glitter. So this is what everything looks like after the second coat of glitter. I'm now going to remove that bottom bit of tape that I just used to tape off so that I could leave my sort of stainless steel rim to expose that glitter butt that I created in my Facebook group. I'll have a link to my Facebook group down in the description box if you want to check out that tutorial. I do also have tutorials on my channel showing you how to create a glitter butt as well. But I'm going to go ahead and let this dry fully, and then I will spray seal it with 2x clear gloss spray paint and then get it on the turner for 2 coats of epoxy. After my 2 coats of epoxy, my cup is rather smooth, and so now we're going to do any necessary sanding. This is all really fine glitter, so there wasn't a whole lot of sanding that needed to be done other than the top and bottom rims. So I am going to sand the bottom rim, and it's important to make sure that I get this rim sanded because we want to treat this bottom rim that has the stainless steel exposed just like we would our top rim. We want to make sure we have that fine line of stainless steel exposed as far as where that edge of epoxy is going to end. And I want to make sure I don't have any of that epoxy under the underside of the cup, since we want this sort of glitter butt look to be established for the bottom. So I'm going to go around the bottom with just a 60 grit sanding block and get everything nice and smooth. You can follow up with a finer grit if you feel like you need to. I didn't really feel like it was necessary because it wasn't a whole lot of sanding. I just needed sort of that really sort of harsh grit in order to knock off the top and bottom sort of sharpness at the edges, and that was pretty much good. So I will follow up the top rim with my nail file tool to create that fine line of stainless steel. I'm not going to do that with the bottom. The 60 grit sanding block was more than enough to establish a nice sort of rim around the bottom and knock off any epoxy that got on the underside of the cup. So following up with that nail file tool to get that fine line of stainless steel. Once I'm done going around the top rim with this tool, I then will just clean this off with a little bit of 91% rubbing alcohol, and then we'll be ready to do our pinstriping. So pinstriping is not something you have to do for your plaids. I do feel like it enhances the overall look of a plaid, but really it's whatever you choose. I think that plaids look just as beautiful, just glittered and maybe a decal of some sort, or adding the pinstriping. It kind of just depends on what kind of plaid look you're going for. So I'm going to finish this up, get this cleaned up, and then let's hop over to doing our pinstriping. All right, so for pinstriping, I have a combination of some washi tape, some nail tape, and I also have some vinyl that we're going to be using. So I got both of these vinyl from Vinyl Gallery. They are Teckwrap craft vinyls, so I'll make sure to link the exact colors and color shift for these down in the description box, as well as a discount code to help you save a little bit of money. So I'm going in with like this purple to pink shifting one first, and I did cut the pinstripes or the vinyl lines for these initial stripes to be the same size. So I believe that the width of my stripes, I'm sorry, not the width, the height of my stripes, I should say, is 0.10 inches, and then I just do the standard 11.5 inches wide so that it takes up most of my mat when I go to put this sheet of vinyl on top of my mat to cut it with Cricut. So I'm going to go in every other square with the vinyl lines of this like purple to pink shift vinyl, okay? So I'm doing every other until I get all the way around the cup, and then I'm gonna go in with my finer lines next. So like I said, the pinstriping can be done however you choose to do it. I think that there's a lot of different styles and ways that you can do your pinstriping when it comes to plaids. I recommend, if you're not really sure of how you want to approach the pinstriping, to look at a couple of examples in pinstripes or like plaids that have those lines built through them, and that'll kind of help you determine where you should be placing your lines. So I do have a tutorial on my channel, which I will link down in the description box, where I did a plaid that was just vinyl striping, and I actually didn't do any glittering whatsoever. That could be helpful too when you're trying to put together and establish how you want your pinstriping to go. But if that doesn't work, I definitely recommend taking an example and just looking at an example plaid to help you determine where your pinstripe should go when it comes to your plaid. So now that I have done those initial vertical lines, I'm going to go in with this sort of like purple not washi tape, it's nail tape. So it's a really, really fine nail tape. Nail tape is great to work with, but also can be quite challenging and difficult. It does repel epoxy and does do a bit of lifting sometimes, so sealing it is going to be very important. It's also super thin, so you have to be careful when it comes to using this as well. I love it because it gives you like the finest lines, and you don't have to try and cut that on your cutting machine, because that would be an absolute nightmare, let's be honest. But what I'm doing with this nail tape is I am putting it on either side of my vertical lines that I did with that purple to pink shift holographic vinyl I used first. So it's still within the same square section or row of squares as the initial line. It's just on either side of that thicker sort of piece of vinyl that's there. And this is just, again, I'm literally doing this pinstriping just kind of whatever I feel like looks good. So I didn't even use a reference, but I kind of took into thought what I did with my vinyl striped plaid that was just the striping without any glittering, and kept that in mind as I was putting together the pinstripes on this cup. So after I have put all of these vertical lines on right next to the first initial vinyl line, I'm just going to trim everything up, and then I'm going to get into doing my horizontal lines. So no sense in watching me continue to add the vinyl lines here. I'm going to go ahead and skip to doing the horizontal lines so that we can see how this all pulls together. All right, so with my iridescent sort of pink to more yellow shift, I would say, it's almost like a pink to coral, but it definitely has a little bit of a yellow shift. We're going to go in with those lines and put them across the cup horizontally. So I'm using my cup cradle to help me create super straight lines all the way around the cup here. And I am putting those just like I did with my vertical lines, every other set of squares, okay? So it's not going to go in every single row, it's going to go every other. So for the top, it'll be all across the purple squares, and for the bottom, it will be sort of all across those mostly coral dominant squares, okay? So the other thing and the other tip that I'll say when it comes to creating or using pinstripes and using this much vinyl lines on your cup, what I like to make sure, and maybe this is just a me thing, maybe nobody else cares, but I like to make sure that my vinyl lines up all on the same side. So I want to make sure that the seams for all of my vinyl stripes are on the same side. That way, I just feel like it's a cleaner look. Now, some people probably don't care. I'm a little bit finicky in that respect, which is kind of funny because I don't like to do any sort of measuring whatsoever, but I'm really finicky when it comes to my vinyl line placement. But that's just my preference, but just kind of a thought too. That way you can keep kind of all your seams in one section. And that way, that sort of can be the back side of your cup if you want it to be. And it just kind of looks purposeful, if that makes sense. So I'm going to finish putting the horizontal lines all the way around this cup here. And that will be it for this color vinyl, okay? So I am going to go in once again with another set of vertical lines here. And that is just going to kind of tie up and tie together this entire look. All right, so we're going to go ahead and finish up our lines here. So I did end up cutting in between where each of my vinyl lines cut. Another sort of tip for saving your vinyl lines is when you take out your little vinyl strips, there's always like a space, right, of vinyl in between each of them. I like to cut those and make those vinyl strips as well. So that's what I've done with these thinner strips here. This is just sort of the middle sections of where the two pieces of vinyl cut out of the vinyl, and I use those to create the vertical strips that go down the length of the cup in the sections that didn't have the 3 sections of vinyl. So we went every other with that initial vinyl line. The fluorescent pink to orange yellow shift is going to go in the next square that's next to that. So I'm going to put those vertically along the cup, and then I'm going to take the purple to pink shifting vinyl, and I'm going to do one more set of horizontal lines around the cup, across my coral squares in the top section and across my purple squares on the bottom section. I just felt like I needed to continue to add a little bit more vinyl lines, and again, you can add as much or as little vinyl line work as you want to. I was just kind of in the mood to just continue to add. I felt like the pink to yellow to orange shift was just really a lot, and so I wanted to still bring in those pink purple colors, and so going back and adding this vinyl striping horizontally around the cup in all of those open squares that didn't have horizontal vinyl lines, I felt like just pulled everything together and kind of just made it seem like everything goes together. So I hope that totally makes sense. Definitely do as you please when it comes to vinyl striping. Definitely do whatever you feel like works for you and works best for you. Use an example if you feel like you need to, or don't if you feel like you want to be like me and just wing it. But definitely have fun with it. I feel like this is just really what pulls a plaid together, is when you add those vinyl stripes and just can like step back and look at that cup in your hand and go, wow, this just looks awesome. So after I'm done placing all of my horizontal lines, I then am going to seal my vinyl. So washi tape and holographic vinyls, of course, have a tendency to repel epoxy, so I definitely recommend sealing them. You can seal them with a clear gloss spray paint. You could seal them with Quick Coat if you have Quick Coat from CC DIY. I personally like to use polyacrylic, Minwax polyacrylic from just Walmart, and it's a great sealer for sealing in my vinyl, and it's going to make sure I don't have any issues with my nail tape or my holographic pinstriping lifting during my final coats of epoxy. So as soon as I am done sealing all of my vinyl in, I'll let this spin on the turner for about 20 to 30 minutes until everything is completely dry, and then I will go in with my final coats of epoxy, which is 2 coats of epoxy to get this cup completely sealed. So that is it for today's tutorial. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, definitely be sure to give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again in the next one. Bye!